Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Curious of 2022. Curious Sparks, as you know, is our roundup of everything that's interesting that's happening in digital culture and social media and technology more broadly. This is a look back at 2021 and a little look ahead at 2022. You may have seen some of this stuff already because I've covered it in previous Curious talks, but that's kind of, the consequence of rounding up the year before. So what we're going to look at today is 6 broad categories. The metaverse, for want of a better term, the year in social, social e-commerce, the creator economy, that's including Web3 and NFTs. I know I have to. AR and camera commerce, and how the web is broadly getting better. And the whole year is kind of in the light of these 3 big impactful stories. Obviously, number one is it was another pandemic year. Fingers crossed, the last pandemic year. Number 2 was Apple's decision to effectively block tracking from third-party apps. And number 3 was Mark Zuckerberg's decision to rename his company and go all in on the metaverse. And we're going to start with that. I prefer to call it gaming and immersive spaces. Other people prefer to call it the metaverse. There's a lot of crossover. Back in June, Mark Zuckerberg said, over the next 5 years or so in this next chapter of our company, I think we'll effectively transition from people seeing us as primarily being a social media company to being a metaverse company. And then, good to his word, in October came the big news that Facebook, the company, was no more. It's now Meta. Facebook is still a product, it's still a platform, but it's now Facebook from Meta. And if nothing else, this really kick-started the public conversation of the metaverse. Until Mark Zuckerberg made this big announcement, nobody really gave 2 hoots about it. Since he made the announcement, you can't move for hearing the word. So he definitely kick-started the public conversation. I think it's worth, just before we move on, take a very quick look at Mark's vision of meetings in the metaverse. Hopefully this video plays okay for you.
Hey, wait, where is Naomi? Let's call her.
There might not be any sound. You don't necessarily need sound. So
Hey, should we deal you in?
Sorry, I'm running late, but you've got to see what we're checking out. There's an artist going around Soho hiding AR pieces for
share
people to find.
digital data from augmented
3D
reality
street art?
spaces
That's cool.
into
Send that link over so
virtual
we can all look
meeting
at it.
space, for example, and it's all
This is
powered by
stunning.
creators and creator payments and stuff.
It's awesome.
Now, obviously, this
I
is
love
kind
the
of a
movement.
Californian
it's disappearing.
utopianism.
Hold
But
on.
what
I'll
I
tip
think
the
is
artist
quite
and they'll accept
interesting, regardless of the execution of that video, they're quite interesting ideas. And if we look at Mark's definition of what is the metaverse, he calls it an embodied internet, where instead of just viewing content, you're in it and you feel present with other people as if you were in other places. And I think that's a pretty good definition, but there's also there's a difficulty in defining the metaverse, because I think technologists look at it one way and people in marketing and journalism look at it in another way. I think the technologist point of view is kind of like this. It's a metaverse is like you've written a load of words on a whiteboard and then you've drawn a circle around it, and some of those words are real and some of them might go with others, but they might not necessarily end up working in that way. It's sort of like trying to define the information superhighway in the early 1990s. The things that I think are broadly encompassing the metaverse are things like the 6 major drivers are the increasing number of content creation platforms, live streaming, cloud and AR, VR technology, decentralized infrastructure, maybe things like crypto and NFTs. There's like more broad technical advances in hardware and spatial computing. Then you've got games as social media and online social multiplayer and cross-platform. And I think it's these 2 that most people, like non-technology people, see as being the metaverse. And it's understandable because they are the most visible parts of it. They're not the whole of it, but they're the most visible parts. The conversation of what is the metaverse, even before Mark Zuckerberg, was sort of kicked off by music in gaming spaces with the Travis Scott thing in April of 2020. That's continued throughout 2021. We saw 21 Pilots do a big gig in Roblox, which was interesting. You could kind of vote for what you saw next. There was a really high level of interactivity. This summer, Fortnite came back with a big Ariana Grande. I would hesitate to call it a concert. Ariana Grande experience. And of course, one of the best of the year, if not the best, was Easy Life at the O2 in Fortnite. So I think we're going to still see more of those happening. But I also start to see signs of kind of a more diverse range of experiences, not just music. But this year we saw Radiohead mount an exhibition of their Kid Amnesia album release in Unreal Engine on PlayStation 5. And The Matrix released an incredible kind of interactive promo for the new Matrix movie. We saw Fortnite team up with the artist Cause and the Serpentine Gallery in London for an online-offline exhibition. So my prediction for 2022 is a lot more diverse art and entertainment experiences in this way. Loads of brands took to Roblox this year, from Paris Hilton to Hyundai to Chipotle to Forever 21. Fashion brands from Gucci to Nike to Vans to Ralph Lauren. Loads of people experimented with immersive spaces using Roblox. The reason they chose Roblox is not because they want to reach 15-year-old boys necessarily. The reason they chose Roblox is the same reason that VCCP chose Roblox, is it has great creator tools and it allows you to do that experimentation in virtual spaces. So that's what Roblox is more about to me. It's more about the tools and the idea that they're easy to create and easy to use than they are about reaching the Roblox audience. ITV launched an experience, a Get Me, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here branded experience, sponsored by John Lewis in Fortnite, saying that you can't move the audience, you have to go to where they are, and we need to make sure our IP and our presence is in those places. That was their justification for doing this type of thing. I would kind of counterpoint with this thing that a presence alone is not enough. It's not enough to just build something and just be there if you're not offering anything to anybody. Now, a lot of these Roblox experiences we saw were pretty good in that way. They had mini games, they had creation tools. I think some of the best ones, two of the best ones I saw this year were from Tommy Hilfiger and from the British Fashion Council. Tommy Hilfiger didn't build a Roblox world as many did. They just worked with creators to design Roblox specific gear. They got the best Roblox fashion creators, worked with their own fashion team to design Tommy Hilfiger native Roblox gear. Really nice stuff. Likewise, the British Fashion Council, they held a copy of their physical awards in a virtual recreation of London's Royal Albert Hall. And again, they worked with creators in Roblox to give their first inaugural Metaverse Fashion Award and reward the creators who are making the best fashion in these spaces. So I think that's really nice when you properly engage a community like that. Virtual fashion had a pretty big year still. Bitmoji especially, loads of brand partnerships. Off-White was one of them. Crocs was one of them. Ralph Lauren teamed up with Zepeto, which is a South Asian avatar-based social network. They made actually clothes you can buy. They're selling Ralph Lauren gear in Zepeto. Burberry teamed up with a company called Blankos, who are making a NFT-based game. Going to come back to NFTs a little bit later. The biggest news of the year probably was Fortnite again, though. Fortnite did a team up with Balenciaga. The first time they've done this kind of high fashion team up partnership. They didn't go half-hearted. They didn't just release a bunch of stuff. They also did a physical range of gear that you could buy. And a massive global outdoor campaign featuring these characters. So took it really, really seriously. It was really nice. I spent some of my Fortnite V-Bucks on buying one of these hoodies for buying the hoodie skin in the game as well. So they got at least some of my money. And we saw entertainment franchise crossovers all throughout the year. There's no signs that this is going to stop. Blackpink teamed up with PUBG Battlegrounds, which is like a Fortnite competitor. EVE Online, which is this massive multiplayer starship trading battling game, have just announced or just launched a Doctor Who collaboration featuring characters from BBC, and even characters starting to appear as themselves in games, like Neymar Jr., the Brazilian footballer, who appeared in Fortnite as an unlockable character skin with loads of alternatives. It was really, really nice. And again, there's no signs of this stopping. However, there is a question that maybe the real metaverse, if we want to call it that, could start at work and not in gaming. Now, gaming's got this huge space already, but maybe, just maybe, the real mass market breakthrough happens in gaming space. In workspaces. So Horizon launched its Horizon Workrooms this year. It's for their Quest VR headset. It allows you to scan your desk, set your workspace, hold meetings in that space, invite people in using Messenger and using video chat. And it's really quite interesting to see how people have taken to it. I'm going to play another short video here. And again, I'm not sure how well you can see or hear that. I'm not hearing anything at the moment.
Looking to my right like this, sorry, four of us.
There's a little bit of sound there.
Liz or
so this is the company from Gymshark holding their first meeting in VR in Horizon Workrooms. You might have seen this video doing the rounds, but they're just amazed at how much more present you feel when you have kind of a physical set location, when someone is to your left and someone is to your right and someone's ahead of you, and you can see your hands and move your hands. And it's so much more interesting than just a box of flat squares where everybody's seeing things in a different order. Ben Thompson, who's a strategist, says there's really a tangible sense of being in the same room as everyone else. And not only in terms of just having a discussion, but even things that are like surprisingly familiar little things, like noticing the person next to you is not paying attention and is doing email on their computer. It just feels more real and more present. And that's what Mark Zuckerberg was talking about in his explanation of what the metaverse is. The biggest bottleneck to Meta's metaverse, which is Horizon, is the Quest headset itself. Now, it's really good. It's the best VR headset there's probably ever been. Certainly the most accessible VR headset there's ever been. And it's selling not bad. It's just had its biggest year ever. But even so, that's still like a small market. It's still selling, about the same, maybe slightly more than the latest Xbox console. Not as many as Sony, not as many as Nintendo, and certainly not as many as the console gaming area in general. And Meta have pinned all of their hopes onto the Quest headset. I hope it succeeds. I don't know, but that's certainly the bottleneck to going bigger. Microsoft, conversely, have introduced a service called Mesh, which just works with multiple different systems and multiple different realities to bring them all into the same space. You can have a VR headset or not. You can have a digital avatar or not. You can be in a physical space, virtual space, and everybody's brought together using this Mesh service. So in the left here, you can see a video call where some people are represented by their avatars and some physically. On the right, you can see a fully virtual meeting, and it's open to a lot more platforms. It doesn't depend on a VR headset. So maybe there's something in there. And I think this idea of not just being fully VR and not being fully physical, but moving in between the spaces is probably where the future of this is going to go. Here's a little concept video from Unity, which I think is really interesting, showing these different scalings of, this thing works. It's a real thing. It's not CGI kind of invented for nothing, but it's not a product yet. But just sliding up and down that scale of how much your reality you're in, I think that's going to be kind of what we end up settling on as the metaverse. It's just this immersive scale between loads and loads of different things. Let's move on to social. So I'm going to talk about TikTok clones. I'm going to talk about community, starting with this idea that this year, not for the first time, every platform has decided it wants to be TikTok. Why is that? Well, TikTok reached this year for the first time 1 billion monthly active users. Now, that's not the biggest because Instagram is still bigger. It has potentially up to double that. I'm not quite sure of the latest figures. But what's interesting is how quickly it's arrived there. It got to 1 billion users in half the time of Instagram, which is phenomenal. From nothing to 1 billion users in 4 years is, wow. And we see in a WARC survey they did recently, when they were asking marketers, where do you expect to invest more in the year ahead? TikTok is way up there. Everybody wants to be on TikTok and everybody wants to be in TikTok, and platforms want to be TikTok. We can see TikTok's influence in the broad format through Instagram Reels. That was launched back at the end of 2020, but Instagram Reels, straight up copy of TikTok. They've now extended that into Facebook as well. I think you can only view them, not create them, something like that. Even so, that's kind of really going for the big market reach. Instagram has said, as publicly stated, it's going to completely reposition itself around video. Video is going to be the most important thing. YouTube Shorts likewise launched at the end of 2020 in very, very few small markets, launched globally in 2021. Again, a straight up TikTok copy. Less features to it, many less features to it. Hasn't been iterated on very quickly. It's not very discoverable, but just from them being on the scale of YouTube, it's already managed to accrue masses and masses of users and masses of views. And even Reddit, which Reddit bought a company called Dubsmash, which was a competitor to Musical.ly, which was what TikTok is eventually based on. I'll draw an org chart one of these days. Anyway, Reddit bought a TikTok competitor called Dubsmash. They've adopted that into their app, only on iOS at the moment, but it's turning Reddit into a video platform as well. But what they really want to copy is not just the way that it works, but how viral it is. That's the thing that nobody can quite get. So they're copying all these virality features left, right, and center as well. So quoting comments or replying to comments, including them in your videos, that's a big TikTok thing. So Reels just launched that recently. And even Twitter has just launched that recently. You can reply to a tweet by using an image or a video. I don't know how well that fits with Twitter's core product, but you can. Reels introduced the remix feature earlier this year, which again is a TikTok thing. You take somebody's video, you do a response to it, you put the two together. TikTok itself has moved on to introducing green screening, which is like it sounds, using virtual backgrounds so you can put yourself into other people's videos. It's a really nice execution. And to talk about, to show you how green screen works and to talk about TikTok's meme culture and how brands can get involved with it, we have our first guest speaker, which is Eleanor Weitzer. She is going to talk all about TikTok and meme culture.
Hi, I'm Eleanor, social and influence creative at VCCP, and today I'm going to take you through meme humor and how it translates to TikTok. So in 2021, brands jumped on TikTok and attempted to engage with the obscenely quick turnaround in content and humor on the platform. But it's not enough for brands just to exist passively and engage in memes that are already a couple of days old. Understanding internet humor is vital to being able to have an active role as a brand in the meme world. So let's break down 3 meme formats and why they're funny, the target audience, and how the rest of the internet might see them. So first up, we have something like this. An overall wholesome meme. It's aimed at people who just aren't online as much. They aren't well versed in online humour, so this is really sweet and genuine meme. It's wholesome and supportive, but I can guarantee that within a few hours of sharing this politely to the world, someone on a forum somewhere picked it up and added a layer of meaning that it was never intended to have. But I mean, welcome to the internet, right? And if you scroll a bit further, you'll find something with a little bit more of internet spice like this. So we've got a format here that starts to really dig its nails into meme humor, affirmations that are surrounding mental health, coping in capitalism, and trying to be an acceptable person. And it doesn't sound funny when I lay it out so plainly, but the affirmations page has 905,000 followers on Instagram. They're speaking to people's anxieties and perhaps adding fuel to the fire. Finally, here's where a meme might end up. Once it's been through a wholesome stage and picked up by various meme pages online, this is what it could become, a complex, layered bit of internet history. Maybe you might find a particular reference funny, or maybe it's hysterical because you know where it started. So here's the example. So now you know a little bit more about meme humor, but how does it translate to TikTok? We can see how the pace of TikTok makes the understanding of humor and trends so important. Within hours, the narrative has changed, or people just don't care anymore. So feed the algorithm and go past the explore page, and maybe you can be a funny brand on the internet too.
Elsewhere, what we're seeing in social is the return of the niche, the revival of groups and communities. People are kind of backing away from, we've been talking about this for 2 or 3 years, but it continues on. People are kind of backing away from this big newsfeed model with all the stories about misinformation and disinformation and cyberbullying. you're sharing this space with loads of people from loads of different contexts. It's the more people you add, the less it really works for you. So from Facebook groups to Twitter communities, big existing platforms are moving towards a community or interest-based group model, while social networks that start off with that model, like Reddit and Discord, are seeing continued growth. And to talk about what's next for communities and creators and connection and how brands can get involved, we have Camilla Toro.
Are finally practicing what they preach, truly connecting like-minded people. Arguably, we can say that all platforms are reorganizing their internal structures around communities, like Facebook groups and Twitter communities. And if they don't do it now, they will be doomed to fail, as people won't see the value of coming to them. This isn't a new trend. I've been following the evolution of online communities since at least 2019, when they started to migrate away from the generalist feed that caters to the masses. People became more tech savvy and quickly learned to navigate platforms and apps to find like-minded people, no matter how niche. This was also known as social splintering. For the past 3 years, communities have been connecting and growing strong. They've been maturing and creating, holding and heightening the value they hold. So what is the next chapter? The answer is that communities need to evolve to thrive. And by that, I mean feed off each other with the best set of tools to get the most value. This is challenging for platforms who are enabling those communities to exist, as they'll need to introduce supporting and enhancing tools that incentivize people to keep coming back. What happens to community members? We can split them between creators and audiences. Creators will have the opportunity to monetize what they do on the platforms through subscriptions and tipping. Audiences who want to support creators will pay to access exclusive content and features. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter, plus many others, are trialing micropayments and subscriptions as a way of allowing creators who first brought the audience together to be profitable. What happens to brands, I hear you ask? Brands have often struggled with community management. They can learn a lot about driving engagement from creators who built their businesses with the community in mind and now have access to tools which will further help them to strengthen the relationship with their own audience. Many brands who want to engage in communities will find themselves with a dilemma. Should they hand over more control to creators or keep control by becoming creators themselves?
I mentioned before how there's this revival of the niche, how people are going back to interest-based groups. And the 4 examples I use, Facebook groups, Twitter communities, Reddit, and Discord, are also 4 brands that have launched this year their own social live audio spaces. If you've ever used Clubhouse, you know the deal. You have speakers and you have listeners, and it's live and people can raise their hands and ask questions, and it's interactive. The difference is this is really, this is not a service. It's a feature. And that's why Clubhouse, I think, has left the public conversation. It's still going, but these movements towards Twitter Spaces and especially are kind of finding where communities hang out and offering them a new way to communicate. I think brands should be doing more in live social audio and communities. Who am I to know? Live video also had a very big year. Live video is more than one thing. There's the kind of the big broadcast Twitch model, which this year has kind of gone from strength to strength, 45% increase in Twitch viewerships since the year before. TikTok have leaned heavily into live this year as well, making it much more interactive, making it much more administrated. You can have co-hosts, you can schedule, you can reply to comments directly and so on. Instagram took its rooms model, its messenger model, and turned that into live rooms where you can have groups of up to 50 people, I think, don't quote me on that, talking at the same time in mass group chats. And one really interesting development of this has been the watch together model, which I really like, where you have a live room where everybody's consuming the same content together. For example, Twitch has done this through its partnership with Amazon Prime. Twitch streamers can launch Amazon Prime watch parties where everybody who has an Amazon Prime account can come and watch content and hang out together with this streamer while they kind of watch along or talk through it. They can chat in the comments. We've seen Discord do this with YouTube. We've seen Facebook even commission original content specially for this, like Cardi Tries, where Cardi B tries things. And it's such a popular feature that you even see rivals kind of coming together like this. So Netflix launched a new animated series based on the video game League of Legends. And for the first episode, they did a live watch party on Twitch, which is owned by its rival, Amazon Prime, because they understand the value of getting this audience together and getting it excited about something. I just learned this morning that Netflix have kind of done that again with their new documentary about the footballer Neymar Jr., allowing a Brazilian Twitch streamer to include the content in his stream for the first time. So this has got, again, really big potential. I don't see many brands doing it. I think it's a really, really nice, interesting way, commission some content, get people together, get them all engaged. I'd love to see more people doing that, more brands doing that. So does all this mean that people are no longer watching television? Are they only watching Netflix and Twitch live streams? Is TikTok the only game in town when it comes to streaming videos? Well, to answer those questions and more, we have our next guest speaker, which is Annabelle Eve, who's going to be talking to us about some assumptions of media consumption during the COVID period and myth busting some of those assumptions as well. So over to Annabelle.
About some of the interesting things we've seen in media and what we expect to come in the future, particularly this year. But first, I'll address some of the key assumptions that we often get and help put them into context. So, first assumption is everyone watches subscription VOD now who watches live TV. In terms of live TV, it varies a lot by the audience you're speaking to. You know, older adults, TV almost encapsulates sort of 80% of their video viewing, where they're actually younger audiences, it's around about 25%. And it tends to be a bit more appointment viewing, so those larger shows, they'll make sure they'll make them. So stuff like Great British Bake Off. Interestingly, something we've seen this year is the fact that Netflix has overtaken Channel 4 in UK reach. Now, this is interesting to see it into context. Equally, we did see Channel 4 partner up with Amazon Prime, and we anticipate we'll actually see a lot more of those partnerships and sort of reciprocal exchanges of content, particularly with stuff like the tennis, where people want to sort of get as many eyeballs as possible. Another key assumption is everyone listens to podcasts now. And when we look at sort of the UK's audio share, you know, live TV still does dominate, although it is slightly declining. And we're seeing a bit more of a trend of sort of those streaming music also increasing. However, podcasts are still quite niche. That said, we've seen Spotify Premium now is overtaken reach of Radio 2. Now, this is interesting because if Spotify Premium was a radio station, it would be the UK's highest reaching radio station. And obviously, we can't actually advertise on Radio 2 or Spotify Premium, but that's where the podcasts could come in, where brands could get involved within these sort of high-reaching platforms. And then the third assumption is Facebook's old news and everyone's on TikTok. Facebook actually still is very the highest reaching social media channel for all adults. And actually we've seen the reach sort of bounce back recently. And it's quite helpful to put it into context of all the other sort of platforms. However, when we do look at sort of time spent, the majority of people will spend a very similar amount of time on social media. However, when we look at time spent on sort of TikTok, people are spending the same amount of time on TikTok as they on YouTube. So we can see sort of these sticky platforms, and particularly with Snapchat, the people that use Snapchat spend a lot of time on it. So quite interesting from almost a sequential messaging point of view. So some of the key themes that have really come out in the past 2 years is platforms that really allow you to tailor your content, so allow you to watch what you want to watch and listen to what you want to listen to, are growing. Because we get to tailor our content, we're seeing people are more engaged, so which is an advantage for advertisers. And then particularly with social media, the platforms that really allow you to collaborate with content and easy to almost get involved, we are seeing growing. So things to look out for in 2022, we will see it's actually a lot more content first, because people are being more discerning of content. We'll see more partnerships such as the Amazon Prime and Channel 4 partnerships. More sort of focused environments, us as advertisers, the context and the attention will be really, really important. And then actually platforms that really allow collaborations, we imagine will continue to grow.
I want to turn, well, we're still on social, but turn a little bit more commercial. Let's talk about social e-commerce. So everybody knows that e-commerce, this is kind of accepted fact now, that e-commerce growth was massively accelerated during lockdown. We saw it hit huge high peaks. But interestingly, drilling into this year's data, we've actually seen a decline in sales throughout the year, a regression towards the mean. And if we look at sort of a rough prediction of where the growth kind of perhaps would have been had it not been for the pandemic, we can see that they're coming back down to meet each other. It could be that in 2022, the level of sales will end up being more or less what was expected from 2022 anyway, or maybe only slightly higher. So initially people talked about kind of 10 years of growth, then they started scaling it down to 5 years of growth, and now they're sort of adjusting it to 2. And maybe it was just a temporary blip, and the end result is that nothing's really changed in terms of the volume of sales anyway. Whether the types of sales have changed, we can't get from this data. But I know from personal experience that you can't beat going out physically shopping, going to the high street. So I was in Covent Garden just 2 weeks ago, and there was this enormous queue for one of the shops, and it wasn't the Apple shop. It was for Glossier. Glossier have just opened their first new flagship store in Covent Garden. There's actually not a lot of stock in there. It's really a Glossier experience, but huge queue all the way down the street. So people still want to be out there experiencing things. And for 2022, we're going to see more digital brands trying physical. Gymshark has said that it plans to open on Regent Street with workout studios as well as all its branded goods. And Amazon is to open its first clothes shopping store in the US in Los Angeles called Amazon Style, which will be all about kind of they're using their fulfillment to bring you different styles to try on and so on, and then buying and having it delivered to your house later. And more more online shopping services are kind of tying themselves in with physical shops as well. So Google Maps, for example, I think this is only US at the moment, but coming soon, will now tell you if the shop has the item you want in stock. So even if you don't want to buy it online, you know it's there before you waste the journey, or you can buy it and go there and pick up yourself, become your own delivery driver, the click and collect model. Likewise, Shopify, they've got their shop app, which also shows you stores near you that offer local pickup. If you want to just buy something and drop in and pick it up yourself, you don't want to wait next day, 2 days, 3 days for the thing to arrive in the post or whatever. So an interesting kind of shift there. I mentioned at the start that Apple's decision to kind of ask people if they want to opt out of tracking is essentially effectively blocking third-party tracking. That's not going to go anywhere. That's only going to get more severe throughout the year. Also, we've seen Chrome's got its plans to phase out third-party cookies, which is going to make it very hard for advertisers to track their audience. Plus, there's loads of new regulation incoming about how much you can track, how you can target. So it's going to become a very, very tough environment for people looking to advertise and convert on the web. Because of that, we're going to see an increasing importance of first-party data. So to talk to you about the end of cookies and the importance of first-party data, we have Claire Tussler, who's the Chief Data Officer So over to you, Claire.
2021 and the couple of years before that, the biggest trends that we can see across data and analytics is that they are driving huge projects. So this has come out of marketing, and data and analytics is now sitting at the boardroom. So becoming a data-driven business is an objective for a lot of companies these days. And that's because being data-driven means that you drive efficiency and effectiveness, which are the two things that most companies are striving for at the moment. The reason for this is the technology now exists where we can connect everything together. So companies can gain insights from all of the operations that happen across the business and really understand how to move forward in the most efficient and effective way. Now, obviously, every company is on a transformation project. Not many have got there yet, but it's the North Star for most companies in terms of making sure that they are being as direct data-driven as a business as possible. But there are some stumbling blocks along the way. The first is the demise of the third-party cookie, which has been talked about at length, and this is going to have a huge impact on a lot of companies and how they develop their marketing strategies, as they just won't be able to do that mass marketing anymore. But next year is the introduction of the restrictions for products which are high in fat, sugar and salt. So these products will not be allowed to be advertised on TV before 9 p.m. and also online advertising is going to be highly regulated and restricted. So a lot of our clients, such as Domino's and Cadbury's, are going to have to change their marketing strategies in terms of how they start engaging with consumers in a completely different way, because they still need to get their brand message over. They still need to have interactions. They still need to have relationships with these consumers. So how do they do it in the new world? Well, first-party data is riding in to save the day. First-party data used to be top of the agenda several years ago, and then because the technology came in that allowed mass collection of cookies and the ability to communicate with a huge amount of people at the same time, it kind of lost favour. But it's now coming back up to the top of the agenda and the focus for a lot of companies in order to allow them to have that relationship. Remind me what first-party data is? I hear you cry. Essentially, first-party data is when the consumer has directly opted into receiving communications from the company. So they have chosen to receive information from that specific company. Now, this is a lot easier for the companies that have something to say and they have that relationship and they have the ability to communicate on a regular basis with consumers. For some, they need to work out exactly what that relationship is and what it is that they want to be talking about in the future. But the benefits of first-party data are immense. The first and the most obvious one is the customer has opted in to be contacted. So the engagement rates are much higher. There's a reason for somebody to opt in to receiving communications. They want to hear from that brand, therefore they're going to be much more engaged. The second point is about relevancy and personalization. Now, obviously, marketing, this is exactly where everybody wants to be striving towards. And first-party data allows you to deliver that true relevancy and personalization because of the insight that we can gather along the way about these individuals. We know who they are, we know what they like, we know what they don't like, so we can really engage with them in the most relevant way. And that takes us to the third point. It's all about effective measurement and optimization. We can really understand what's working and what's not working, change, tweak, adapt, optimize, and really improve the marketing strategies going forward. So first party is king again.
As Apple has killed the ability to track ad effectiveness outside of apps, the industry reaction is to bring all commercial activity within apps. Every social app will eventually become a shopping app. This was said about 6 months ago. It's only become more evident since. Social e-commerce creates a kind of a virtuous circle of awareness using tagged media and social posts, consideration with interactive live streams and stories, right through to the purchase, fulfillment, and then loyalty and engagement through messaging and groups, and background again. Facebook has been especially fast to adopt this. Social e-commerce is all across Facebook, from curated selections on Instagram to putting your catalog into Facebook shops. even into allowing small businesses to put their product catalogs and checkout into WhatsApp as well, if that's where they do most of their business. WhatsApp, likewise, you can now advertise on Instagram and drive people into WhatsApp to do the follow-up and conversion. And Meta, sorry, I keep saying Facebook, Meta is bringing together Messenger and Instagram into a unified experience, partly as a defensive measure about being broken up, but also partly as a way to allow businesses to just contact customers no matter which platform they're on. But the big interesting thing in social e-commerce is more about this idea of inspiring people, of reaching people with content that makes them want to buy, putting new products in front of people. Pinterest has been especially active in this area this year. So Pinterest now has, amongst many other features, tagged posts and inspiration stories, so you can show off products in videos and stills and tag them so that people can buy them directly. Likewise, TikTok launched its shopping feature later last year, so shoppable videos with product catalogs. Instagram also, Instagram Shops. I really like when brands use these moments that people are kind of feeling good about to kind of get on top and offer them a product. Like when Arsenal used to score goals, and if you went onto the Instagram account and Arsenal had just scored a particularly good goal, they'd put the image there, everyone's in a buzz, and you could buy the shirt directly through it. So using moments like that, I think, is really smart to inspire people to buy. And if you can't latch onto a moment, then you create one. You create a shopping event, and everybody's been doing shopping events for the last year. Instagram did a whole range of them, including the sort of Buy Black, promoting Black businesses, Black-owned businesses. TikTok held its first UK shopping live shopping event, where a 2-day event featuring, for example, Rylan from X Factor hosting a quiz with influencers, loads of brands, loads of content. YouTube did its first live stream over the holiday season as well, featuring influencers from social media and from television, more celebrity style. And even Twitter jumping on the bandwagon with its first live shopping event, held in conjunction with Walmart, hosted by Jason Derulo of all people. But I think we're going to see loads more of that this year, and especially loads more. Twitter has announced big plans to do a lot more. YouTube has announced big plans to do a lot more. So more live shopping, more inspirational moments. And Adam Mosseri, who's the head of Instagram, says, "We think shopping through the eyes of creators is the future of shopping." So I'm going to talk a little bit about creators and the creator economy, and go into a bit about NFTs and Web3 for those who are not bored of hearing about it already, or those who are hearing about it for the first time, who knows. One way that platforms try to keep creators on side is to give them tools. Everybody's making tools that make creation easy. ByteDance, who own TikTok, have a service called CapCut, which lets you edit, create videos, add nice effects to them. Snapchat launched its own story studio this year. Pinterest bought a company called Voki, and they're going to bring those tools into the platform. Instagram launched a tool called Polar. These are about making it really, really easy to create rich, interactive, inspiring content, but also rewarding creators, giving them more of a share of revenue. Things like YouTube Super Thanks. So if you essentially tip a creator by buying a Super Thanks. You can tip however much you want. You get, once you've bought it, you get this nice animation to say thank you. And then in the comments, when you make a comment, you show up and you have prominence. So it's a way of showing your support for the creator. Facebook has Stars, which is a very similar program. It's also this year for Facebook and Instagram have launched subscriptions as well. So you can subscribe to your favorite creators and get exclusive content from them. This is all what Cami was talking about earlier. And the tools to measure effectiveness as well. So like dashboards to see how well you're converting, how much you're earning, and so on. Other platforms like Reddit and Discord, the kind of the interest-based community platforms, they've gone for a more freemium model. Anybody joins in, but if you buy Reddit Premium or Discord Nitro, you get more. You get faster, you get more rich, you get customization, and you get to share some of that with your favorite creators or favorite community members. Twitter's going in this massively diverse model of just trying everything. It introduced tipping earlier this year, so you can just tip a creator you like, not arrived in the UK yet. It's got super follows, which is its kind of subscription model of creators. So a creator can create exclusive content only for super follow members, or Twitter Blue, which is a subscription kind of premium model where you get features including the much requested undo tweet. So if you pay Twitter $3.99 a month, $2.99 a month, you get to undo a tweet that you've sent. But also this new feature they just announced a couple of days ago. If you're an NFT collector and a Twitter Blue subscriber, you can use your NFT as your profile pic. If you don't know what an NFT is, and I don't blame you, an NFT, very broadly speaking, is a digital token which represents the ownership of a digital item, such as an image or a video. Anybody can have a copy of that thing, but you've got the token that proves that yours is the original. We've seen loads of big money move into NFT, especially art speculation. Sotheby's went all in on NFTs this year. They've gone for the biggest artists. They see it as using this speculation to drive a market. But the value of an NFT can be either functional, which means, what can I use this to do? It does something. Or it can be hedonic. It's just like, how much do I like this in and of itself? I just enjoy having this thing because it means something to me. Or it can be both. It can be functional and hedonic. But if it's neither, then it's just chaff. If you just create an NFT just to create an NFT, nobody values it, nobody cares for it, and it doesn't do anything. Why did you even bother in the first place? Just to do it. So branded NFTs are becoming of varying functionality and hedonic value. Clinique released its first NFTs earlier this year. I would argue they've got zero hedonic value. They just don't mean anything. It's the Clinique logo that slightly shimmers as an animation. But it does give you the chance to win Clinique products for 10 years or something like that. So they've added this functional value. Likewise, Coca-Cola, that actually has some hedonic or cultural value because people like to collect rare Coca-Cola things. But this also gives you the chance to win a year's worth of Coca-Cola. Mattel teamed up with Balmain to create NFTs for Barbie, which also come with these exclusive outfits for Barbie as well, these extremely limited edition. So they're going for both functional and hedonic. And the Australian Open have done these tennis balls that are digital tennis balls generated by real-time data that also you get a chance to win a real match ball if you've kind of fulfilled the criteria. And then some artists and creators are not going to the big platforms for their revenue, but they're going direct to customers with things like fan tokens. Artists like Portugal the Man, you can buy tokens, kind of invest in him, and the more tokens you have, the more access you get to benefits from him. This is kind of the founding function of Web3. Web3 is very hazy. If you ask 5 different people, you get 5 different definitions. Essentially, it's that the users of web services or communities or members of communities hold equity in them using NFTs or similar tokens. To talk to you more about Web3 and why you should or shouldn't do it, and if you do it, what you should or shouldn't do, I'm going to ask Rob Estretino to come in and give you the lowdown.
Web3, because if marketing has 4 Ps, I think Web3 can have 3 Ps. The first one is the promise. So Web3 is essentially a promise that the internet will be run by not a set of centralized networks as it is now, but by a set of decentralized networks, which essentially run on the blockchain. On top of that, it will use tokens as the building blocks for how things operate in this new version of the web. So tokens are a little bit like owning shares. You can own shares in a company. This is about owning shares in other things like creators, communities, etc. And as a result, that will help unlock what's being called a web with property rights. So if you think about it, you don't really own anything on the web right now. You rent it. It all sits on someone else's servers and they have the data. You don't have any of that data that you don't own it. This promises that you will have more ownership and property rights effectively in the web and in virtual spaces, etc. The perils, of course, is that although it sounds great that this will all happen in a decentralized way and it's going to be more democratic, etc., the reality is, if you look at the landscape now, there's already quite a few centralized platforms. Coinbase is centralized. OpenSea, which is a marketplace for NFTs, is centralized. Alchemy, which provides blockchain APIs, is centralized. So there is a danger of returning to old patterns of centralization because that's just how market forces work. The second thing is, from a technical standpoint, blockchains currently don't really provide economies of scale, and that's where the electricity costs come from. So until we address that, it's going to be really hard to really make it as ubiquitous as people hope. And last but not least, if you think about a blockchain as being essentially a giant public record of everything that's ever happened, the privacy issues start emerging, right? So everything, on the one hand, will be more accountable from a public perspective, but there's probably things that we need to discuss that we probably don't want publicly available. And so from a privacy perspective for individuals, for example, it's very, very problematic. And so right now, it's not really being accounted for. And I imagine a lot of companies and startups will emerge in that space as well. And finally, the poppycock. So some things that I think people assume that I don't think are quite right, not now and possibly not ever. So the first thing is, on the short-term basis, I don't think it's going to be a mass adoption set of protocols, predominantly because it's still highly technical. The process is clunky. If you're technically minded, you will probably enjoy it. If you're my mom, you don't even know how to get started. You don't even know what it is. But even if you did, you don't know how to use it. And that's a big problem for regular people to actually use it. So mass adoption isn't going to happen until the front-end tools are much, much more user-friendly. Second thing is that, although this isn't explicit, I kind of sometimes take from some of the hot takes on Twitter that people kind of see Web3 as the new Web2, which kind of presumes that Web2 will be dead. And I don't think that's true either. I think what's going to happen is some people will really want this web with property rights if it comes to fruition, but the vast majority of us just want access to stuff and don't really care about the ownership side and the costs that come with it, and etc., and the complications that come with it. So I think you'll see a combination of both Web3 and Web2, just in slightly more symbiotic ways. So Web2 is not going to die, not anytime soon anyway. And the third thing is that there's this slightly dangerous line of thought that I've seen on Twitter as well about, if everything's run by tokens, then brands are kind of fucked and you don't need advertising and etc. And I just don't think that's true either, because again, a small proportion of companies may run and scale via tokens and don't need any marketing spend, because that's quite an en vogue thing to say. But the reality is most brands will still need advertising to actually communicate at scale. And so I would see Web3 as a web of value for superfans based on ownership. I would see Web2 as still hugely important as a web of access for the vast majority of people. And that's kind of fine. They will coexist.
So NFTs, I'm still kind of on the fence about them. I sort of see some of the value, sort of see some of it not. I don't know how much is hype and how much is real. But when you see brands like Adidas and Nike making big investments, teaming up with people in the space, you have to think there's something going on. So I'm coming around to the idea that this is kind of going to be with us for a while, but I just don't know what form it's going to take yet. Let's talk about augmented reality and camera commerce. I don't know why I said it like that. Phone innovation is mostly happening in AI and cameras. Otherwise, our phones are largely unchanged from the last sort of 5 or 6 years. What that does is allow new things to happen through the camera. So Lens Studio by Snapchat is like really the market leader in this space. They've updated so much stuff this year. You can segment the skin from the clothes or the clothes from the skin. It reads sign language as an input now. And it's also introducing recently kind of natural fabrics and real world physics. So you can get almost like real movement of so like digital outfits with real world drape. This has kind of part of Snapchat's plan for the future. It wants more AR shopping. It wants more digital try-ons. Glasses, bags, headscarves, next jackets, next t-shirts. They want you to be trying things on virtually before you try them on physically. And in 2022, what we're going to see is, I think, AR become a lot more social. So we've got Snapchat's connected lenses let people in the same space or remotely collaborate on the same AR thing. It's no longer so individualistic. And Spark AR, which is owned by Meta, is bringing more AR, group AR effects into video rooms so people can collaborate and join in something together. I also think that AR is going to start turning more out towards the world. It's mostly been a very kind of focused, personal, solipsistic type kind of thing. But with custom land markers, we'll be able to change any physical point into an AR marker. And Spark from Meta has already said that it's got plans to start introducing map-based and real-world AR as well. So expect more of that this year. And more independent developer platforms. Niantic, who make Pokemon Go, they released their platform this year called Lightship. You may have seen one of the speakers at a previous Curious Talk. Snapdragon, who make mostly chips, they're also launching an AR platform for people to use. The other thing that's going to be big next year is that TikTok really joins in with the AR, social AR. They've got a service called Effect House, which lets people build their own AR effects. Our very own Nate from CX has been experimenting with this, as you can see, dancing with a generic robot character. And ByteDance, who own TikTok, bought a company called Pico, which makes a VR headset similar to Facebook's Quest. So much more to come from them next year as well. Snap are the leaders in this space. This year, they launched a new version of Spectacles, which for the first time actually has some AR features built in. They're only a tiny postage stamp sized preview, but what that allows creators to do is see what they're filming, and then all the rendering is later done on in the Snapchat app, so it looks a lot better. Here's a very short video showing how phones and Snapchat lenses can combine for a really interesting experiment with AR shopping. I think that's real, that exists. That's not a concept. That's a combination of Snap Spectacles and a website. Really, really cool idea. I love it. And loads of other companies experimenting with smart glasses, not AR glasses necessarily, but smart glasses that record, that react to voice, that send messages. Facebook teamed up with Ray-Ban. Nreal launched a pair that are just for viewing virtual videos and so on. And again, the big entrant that's expected into this space later this year or maybe next year, Apple has got this long rumored headset to come. It's not going to be a wear out of the house style headset. It's going to be something for professionals to use to create immersive content. But it will be really interesting to see what happens when Apple joins in. Map data is maps and cameras also combining for really interesting things. So Google has now added Google Earth data to Google Lens so that you can navigate your way around the city using directions, but also get information about the things, the businesses around you and in front of you. Apple also added this to its Apple Maps earlier this year as well. Again, a really useful little feature. Hold up your phone, get navigation directions. I do use it, honestly, quite a lot. Maps are also getting a lot more precise. They're no longer just using open GPS data, but they're using visual positioning services to navigate you around indoor spaces, or they're using hardware like Apple's AirTags to be able to navigate you very, very precisely to a point that's centimeters wide. So if you have an AirTag attached to your luggage and you lose your luggage, you can find it exactly. Not just it's in this rough area, but I know exactly where it is. This uses a technology called UWB, which is in a lot of new phones. This has got big potential to do some new things as well. One of the first things is using UWB as a digital car key. If you have an Apple phone or a Pixel 6 Pro or a Samsung Galaxy, you can add your car key as just a card to your wallet on your phone. So instead of holding a physical pair of keys, open up your phone, swipe it open, tap the card, unlock your BMW. Loads more to come in this space. And visual search is also a big deal. Apple's just launched it this year again, called Visual Lookup. Google Lens is really, really good for finding products now. This is a kind of a behavior called see it, scan it, shop it. So looking at a thing, taking a photo of it, finding visual things that look just like it and where to buy it. Snap's done the same thing in Snapchat, and Facebook has announced its intention to do the same thing later this year as well. So right now that's focused around shopping and products. One of the really interesting things from this year is Google announcing that it's got a new AI model called MUM, Multitask Unified Model. What this essentially allows you to do is use multimedia in your search queries. So take a photo of a shirt, type in "find me socks with this pattern," and it understands your query and searches across different results. So you can start kind of mixing and matching results of text and media and voice input and so on. Likewise, if you have this thing on your bike and you know it needs to be repaired, but you don't know what it's called, take a picture of it. It will tell you it's a derailleur, and you just ask, how do I fix this? Instead of saying, what is a derailleur, and so on. So search is becoming more natural, more easy to use, more intuitive. Brings me on to my last section, a better web. So this technology is also, that's powering searches and powering commerce, is also helping the web or apps we use to become a better place. More products are being built for more diverse audiences, which is great. Siri now no longer is gendered, and it no longer automatically sets a gender for you the first time you set it up. It just has voices, which you can choose which one you like. The new Pixel 6 camera has been calibrated to better detect varied skin tones, and it's worked with creators because black people complained before that their skin would look washed out or it would look the opposite. Now these cameras, and not just Google, loads of other companies are working with people to really understand and to make this more equitable for everyone. Pinterest is now using computer vision to allow people to filter search results. If you search for makeup, for example, you can now filter it by your skin tone to find stuff that's better for you. You can search for different styles of hair, curly hair, kinky hair, wet, straight hair, whatever it is. All of this is about just, being really available to everyone. It's long overdue, I would say. I touched on this earlier. Snapchat now understands American Sign Language, so you can use that as an input. This is a game where it teaches me sign language to spell my name or to work out what the thing I'm looking at is. And the same technology is also making images more understandable to people with vision impairments. So Apple Photos will now give you really precise details about what's in a photo, whereas before it might have said a woman in a red canoe on a lake. Now it will say even things like a slight right profile of a woman's face with curly brown hair, she is smiling. Google have this tool called Lookout for people with extreme visual impairments, which you hold it or move it around you, and it describes all the things that are around you in the world. A friend of mine uses this, she swears by it. And Facebook earlier this year started doing more rich image descriptions, telling you who was in the photos that you were scanning on your phone as well. So rather than before it would say 5 people playing musical instruments, it will now say 5 people, including the name of the person. However, later in the year, they actually pulled this feature because these types of things are where accessibility comes into conflict with privacy. It's a good thing for a person with a severe visual impairment to be able to understand the content of an image. But in order for that to work, you need to have a big database of everybody's faces connected to their names. So privacy trumped, in this case, that feature's been pulled, which I think is a bit of a shame, but understandable. All the content on the web and on the internet is becoming more understandable to people with hearing impairments. So Google Chrome can now subtitle any piece of video, not just in YouTube, but any video or audio that you play through Google Chrome. You can opt to have subtitles on. Spotify is now automatically transcribing all its podcasts, and Instagram, TikTok added speech to text to transcribe the content of videos automatically. And all of this stuff doesn't only benefit people with disabilities. It benefits them for sure, which is great. But also in a recent survey by, I think this was Ofcom, 80% of people aged 18 to 24 said they use subtitles while watching TV on any device. And only 23% of people aged 56 to 75 said the same. Whereas there's a 180% higher rate of deafness or hearing impairment in people in that older age group. So younger people are using these subtitles even though they don't need to, because it's more convenient. So accessibility features benefit everybody. In privacy, we've seen a big, strong movement swinging back away from this big, anything goes, laissez-faire attitude. You can on Instagram limit who can reply to your content. You can limit whether strangers can get into contact with you through messaging. Google Search is making it easier to delete your search history or only retain it for a short time. WhatsApp introduced disappearing messages, so you can set a timer. So if a person views your photo once and then closes it, that's it. They never get to see it again. That's really good if you're sharing, for example, a password that you don't want to be secured in your phone forever, and also more sensitive content. And regulation is making the internet safer and more private. This year, we've seen a big shift in from tech platforms in protecting younger users. So YouTube, for example, has content settings that sets, as a parent, you can set how much they're allowed to see in YouTube. From TikTok to Pinterest to Instagram, we're seeing the introduction of creator codes, but also rules on who can and early defaults on how, especially under 13s, what content they can see and who can get in touch with them. And the reason this is happening is not just out of the goodness of the hearts of these platforms, even though they might make it seem like that. It's actually because regulation is being introduced, and the UK introduced this year the age-appropriate design code, which sets limits on how tech platforms should behave and also has punishments for them if they don't. So regulation, when it's about specific harms, really works, because if Facebook's making this change, it has to make the change in one country. It might as well make the changes in all of the countries. So local regulation becomes global regulation, and targeting specific harms rather than just saying break them all up really works. Right, that was pretty much it for me. What we've covered is the metaverse. We've covered what happened in social, about communities and so on. We've seen social e-commerce, a look at the creator economy, Web3 and NFTs, AR and camera commerce, and a better web of making the internet more accessible to everyone. The reason some of that matters is because, again, to go back to this WARC marketing survey, when people said this year how much they expect to invest, a lot of them talked about these things I've just talked about. There's going to be an increased investment in social commerce, an increased investment in gaming, in live streaming, in influencers and social media content creators, in the metaverse, in native advertising. All of these things are what marketers care about. So hopefully this talk, albeit 10 minutes longer than I expected it to be, has in some way set you up for the year ahead. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you so much to all my collaborators from the Innovation Champions team. And hopefully we'll see you all at some point in the real world very soon.